contributed to the Kate Stoneman video. We're here, Kate Stoneman Day 2022, in person and of course broadcasted virtually. Bravo to all of you for joining us and welcome to this great tradition. I'm Professor Mary Lynch, the Kate Stoneman Chair in Law and Democracy. The Kate Stoneman Day ceremony would not have come into being without the energy and effort of so many. And so it would be remiss of me were I not to thank a few people before we get to the fun part of the ceremony. Thank you to our tireless and creative co-chairs of the Women's Law Caucus, Kristen Davis and Emily Williams, who have contributed so much to the success of today. They not only serve on the Kate Stoneman Honorary Committee, but they led the revival of the Women's Law Caucus and organized the entire membership to launch Gender in the Law Week, which started today. I'm also grateful for the wise input of faculty committee members, Professor Christine Chung and Professor Jaya Connors, and for the incredible organizational, logistical, technological, and communication assistance of our hardworking IA staff led by Jeff Sieber, and to our communications team, and to the technical expertise and can-do attitude of Mr. Ben Myers, who pulled all the videos together. We would not be here were it not for the many, many devoted alum, members of the Kate Stoneman Honorary Committee and the Kate Stoneman Awards Committee. Would the student, faculty, staff, and alumni members of the honorary committees stand and be recognized? And now I ask previous Kate Stoneman honorees who are with us here tonight to stand so that we can thank them for their continuing work as trailblazers for change. As you all know, we were unable to gather in person last year. But tonight, we have with us a 2020-2021 honoree. And I'm very pleased to ask the Honorable Christine M. Clark, class of 1996, to stand again so that we can give her an in-person round of applause. And to the many members of the judiciary who took time away from cases and chambers to be with us on this special day, know that we are very grateful that you did so. Disturbing world events outside of this room right now are devastatingly heartbreaking. And we take a moment to reflect and acknowledge on all those who are suffering, especially in Ukraine. Two Albany Law students working with our Dean of Students have identified a humanitarian resource, and anyone who's interested could talk to one of the students or to Dean Queenan to learn a little bit more about what they've identified as a place where we can contribute humanitarian aid. And finally, I want to thank the amazing pandemic students who are with us here tonight. You have been surviving masking and card swiping and putting up your health code, your information. And was that tickle actually, should I be taking a home test? You are juggling midterms, internships, work, family, and other responsibilities. You are our future Kates, male, female, and non-binary. You are our next generation of leaders. You have chosen wisely to be with us here tonight, to hear about and from this incredibly exceptional group of alumni leaders and change makers. Now, it is with great pleasure that I introduce Albany Law President and Dean, Alicia Ouellette.
Thank you, Professor Lynch. Our living, breathing embodiment of Kate Stoneman, our Kate Stoneman professor. Thank you for everything you have done to make today happen. This is really a very, very special day. I'm overwhelmed with joy to welcome all of you to this 28th Kate Stoneman Day at Albany Law School. This is really one of our most inspiring days of the year. And I'm just so happy that we're able to do this together in person, and to all of you who are online, that you're able to join us as well. It makes the crowd even bigger. We have some amazing and accomplished award recipients with us today. And I take particular pride in the fact that all of our honorees this year are actually graduates of Albany Law School. It is a special honor for me to congratulate and welcome the newest member of the New York State Court of Appeals, the Honorable Shirley Troutman, class of 1995. Welcome. 1985. You're so young. I'm delighted to welcome the Honorable Marsha D. Michael, class of 20, I can't even say it. It's been so long since I've spoken in person. 2002, Judge Michael is a rising star in the judiciary, and we're thrilled that you are here with us today. Okay. Rita Pasarell, class of 2008, has been doing tremendous and important work in the area of sexual harassment law. We are so glad that you are here with us today. And I cannot wait to hear from our keynote speaker, Berta Hernandez Truyol. I probably said that wrong, but Berta is an internationally renowned scholar and a global champion of human rights. We're so glad that you are here. Like Kate Stoneman, each of these women are trailblazers in their own right. Like Kate, they understand that the path to making real change is often through law. You've heard about Kate. You know that she was the first woman to be admitted to the bar, and the first woman to graduate from Albany Law School. But she's not the last woman to graduate from Albany Law School to go on and do great things. At Albany Law School, we're committed to continuing the tradition and ensuring that women who graduate from our school are fully prepared to have the kind of impact in their communities that our honorees have had on theirs. Toward that end, in 2020, Albany Law School launched the Women's Leadership Initiative. The Women's Leadership Initiative is a program, an innovative program that will allow our students to follow in Kate Stoneman's footsteps. Just this last fall, we announced the first class of 10 Women's Leadership Initiative Fellows. These students, they're inspiring. I hope you get to meet them all. These students are engaging in personalized leadership development programming. They're creating new events and programs for their peers, they're podcasting, and they're connecting with leaders throughout the legal field. Soon, these 10 Women's Leadership Fellows will begin to develop mentoring relationships with some of our best alumni, and they will also pass down what they're learning to the next generation through community outreach and programming with Girls Inc. of the Greater Capital Region. They will reach back and help develop the next generation behind them. The fellows will also pursue research on women's issues and continue the legacy of Kate Stoneman and the many Albany Law alumni who have followed in her footsteps. So we're proud of our current students, we're proud of our past students, we're proud of the awardees, and we are proud to host Kate Stoneman today. I want to congratulate each of our award winners and thank you all for being here. Happy Kate Stoneman Day.
So now on to the most highly anticipated part of the evening, introducing you to our award winners. And I have the great pleasure this evening to introduce our first honoree, Rita Pasarell, class of 2008. Some people stick their necks out. They do really hard things so the rest of us will benefit. Rita Pasarell, class of 2008, is one of those people. A co-founder of the Sexual Harassment Working Group, Rita joined with other former New York State legislative staffers, all of whom experienced or reported sexual harassment while working for the state. Their exceptional advocacy garnered the attention of policymakers, legislators, and informed journalists. Journalist Alexis Grinnell, who supported her nomination, wrote, "Rita's specific leadership is born of her own experience. She turned an assault on her rights and dignity into massive statewide reform for millions of workers." Journalist Susan Arbetter emphasized in her letter why reporting a politician is so emotionally fraught and professionally painful by quoting Rita's own words from the media. "When taking on an assembly member or senator who has harassed you and thinking about whether to report, there's a real sense of taking on not only that person, but everyone in that harasser's network and everyone who has something to lose. And that is a real obstacle to reporting. When we don't get reporting, we don't get rid of harassment in workplaces." In June 2018, Rita's volunteer group released an influential policy paper, and in 2019, successfully advocated for the first public legislative sexual harassment hearings to be held in New York State in more than 27 years. The New York Times documented the work of Ms. Passerell and her co-founders in an article entitled "How 7 Women Helped Put Sexual Assault on New York's Agenda." Rita is a key member of the group, one of 3 lawyers who review and propose legislation, analyze policy, and speak publicly to the media. The hearings proved to be incredibly effective. We now have improved statewide discrimination and harassment protections, including New York's elimination of the severe or pervasive standard, which was an obstacle for coming forward because of its high threshold. Rita and her colleagues changed the landscape of sexual harassment and business as usual down at the Capitol. Just last week, again, the Senate and Assembly passed another round of legislation, which Rita and her colleagues call the Ending the License to Harass bill. As a volunteer, Ms. Passerell stands with survivors in a nonpartisan, sensitive, and transparent manner. She sensitively guides those who ponder whether to come forward. She's an eloquent educator of New Yorkers on sexual harassment enablers and the concept of institutional betrayal. She and the Sexual Harassment Working Group have advanced the public conversation in a powerful way. One journalist called their work completely revolutionary. We could not be prouder to call her one of our own. Please help me in welcoming to the podium fearless alum, Rita Pasarell.
Thank you, Professor Lynch, for that incredible introduction. Thank you to Albany Law School, the entire Kate Stoneman Committee, all the wonderful students I met with today, and thank you to the fellow awardees today for all of your tremendous advocacy as well towards equity in the legal profession. So before I was a member of the Sexual Harassment Working Group, I was a terrified new legislative counsel in an assembly member's office. That was in 2011. I didn't go in terrified until I, met with him in the first few days. He was creating an experience that was like living in a law exam hypo about sexual harassment. And he was instantly directing me to wear short skirts, heels, things like that. At first I was brushing it off, but then I soon heard from other workers about similar experiences and more egregious ones, such as the legislator demanding that that they share hotel rooms with him, try to get an apartment with him, flirting with people for their jobs, and up through physical attacks, including him touching one worker's breast, sliding his hand up another worker's thigh repeatedly. And excuse me, anyone who pushed back against this, he would immediately pull back responsibilities, pull back pay, fire them, badmouth them in the field. So in a positive way, I didn't make it there very long. After about 3 months, a coworker and I reported him for sexual harassment. And we did not expect what took place to take place, but a few months down the line, we were offered settlement agreements that included non-disclosure agreements, $20,000 liquidated damages if we were ever to speak out, and required us to leave our jobs. So that seemed wrong, but our excellent lawyers, I have a spoiler for you guys, we took the deal. So our excellent lawyers at the time explained to us, yes, this seems wrong, but actually in New York State, the right to be free from sexual harassment was very fragile because of the standard that the state followed at the time, called the severe or pervasive standard. And this is in line with the federal standard. I call it a grotesque standard because it seeds that there is a pretty high level of abuse that is okay for workers to experience before it's considered actionable sexual harassment. And so it means just what it sounds like. A worker has to show that they experienced something either severe or pervasive enough to change the terms of their environment, workplace environment, or else it's not harassment. So we learned what had happened to us quite likely might not be considered that in a jury, before a jury, because there was a lot of ugly cases where this standard is applied. This is the same standard that's applied with like race-based harassment as well. So I mentioned that because there's cases examining how many nooses in a workplace are severe or pervasive, and sometimes deciding that they're not severe or pervasive. Same thing for rapes. Is a rape severe or pervasive? And sometimes cases say it's not. So that's why we took that deal. We settled. And stepping back for a moment, there's this shock that we experience, and so many people that we talk to about all this experience that they say, well, how can all those things not be sexual harassment? That sounds severe or pervasive to me. But something weird has happened where the understanding of sexual harassment has actually advanced beyond what the law will protect. So in a way that's good because it means the law hopefully will catch up, which we eventually did achieve. But it's so dangerous to have a worker believing they have a right when they actually don't. So we wanted to change that at the time. We didn't do that quite yet, but the other piece of that we thought about a lot was the tremendous loss of talent that takes place when good workers, like great workers who are driven out instead of being merit-based treatment, they're just pushed out by bullies. There's some interesting studies that I was just looking at yesterday that found that bullying and harassment are a means for the mediocre to rise to the top. So it's pushing out good workers. And so point being, we took the agreement because we had such a tremendous battle ahead if we were to try to prove in court. So we moved on with our lives. We had this non-disclosure agreement. We were mostly quiet for several years. And then fast forward to 2018, we heard that the state legislature was working on some sexual harassment reforms, and we didn't think they were getting it quite right. So we got in touch with some electeds, and then through the grapevine, we also came to be in touch with other workers who had experienced similar to what we had. And we formed the Sexual Harassment Working Group, pushed for those hearings that Professor Lynch captured perfectly. And we got to work with the electeds, drafting the text of the bills. We incorporated what we learned from the hearings. We had over 23 hours of worker testimony across 2 different days. And we got rid of the sexual harassment standard of severe or pervasive in New York State. And also for all discriminatory harassment, so race, all protected classes. So now it is something that we consider to be much more fair, which is it's discriminatory harassment if you're subjected to inferior terms because of your membership in a protected class, which is right, because you don't go to work to be abused and you don't go to work to be treated differently based on your membership in some protected class. So as Professor Lynch mentioned, we're still working, we're still doing all kinds of bills. But today's honor, I take very, very specially, take it to heart. And I really appreciate it for its recognition that worker power is very important and equity is created by the people that are affected by the laws. And it also gives me a lot of inspiration to keep making change. So.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Kellogg. I am Albany Law School class of 2002. And despite the fact that we just graduated like yesterday, I have somehow had the pleasure of knowing our next honoree for over 20 years. I met Judge Michael on our first day of law school. I had arrived about 20 minutes early for orientation, which I was very quick to learn meant I was about an hour late because apparently you're supposed to show up extra early for your first day of law school. I did not get that memo, but luckily, neither did Judge Michael, as she walked in immediately behind me, and we were debating whether we were going to seats over here or over here on the side because we were late to orientation. But it all worked out perfectly because that was the start of a beautiful friendship. And now I get the honor of introducing Judge Michael as she gets her Kate Stoneman Award. When the notice for the nominations for the Kate Stoneman Award were released, I knew immediately that I wanted to nominate her. The Kate Stoneman Award is given to those who have demonstrated a commitment to actively seeking change and expanding opportunities for women. And Judge Michael fits this perfectly. Born in St. Croix, Virgin Islands, Judge Michael moved to the Bronx when she was 3 years old. Her interest in law began in junior high school when she would accompany her mom to work at the Bronx District Attorney's Office. She watched her mom serve as a data entry clerk, assisting assistant district attorneys, and decided she wanted to become a lawyer as well. Judge Michael fulfilled this goal and is herself a 2002 graduate of Albany Law. She started her legal career at a small neighborhood all-purpose law firm. She represented many clients on civil cases and trust and estates matters as a first-year associate. To have a greater impact in the public sector of the law, Judge Michael began working as a clerk in the Bronx County Supreme Court civil term and later took a position working as a principal law clerk to a New York State Supreme Court justice sitting in the criminal term. In 2015, Judge Michael answered the call to public service, and in November of that year, she was elected to the bench as a New York City Civil Court judge in Bronx County. She presided in the New York City Criminal Court in Bronx County until November 2018, when she was elected as a justice of the New York State Supreme Court, where she served until just over a week ago, when she was appointed to the Appellate Division First Department. Appellate Term, First Department. I knew I was gonna mess that up, I told you. Judge Michael has sought change and expanded opportunities for women, not only by pursuing her own legal career that has broken barrier after barrier, but also by serving as a role model and mentor. During law school and since our graduation, Judge Michael has mentored and inspired students and colleagues alike, and often encourages others to pursue legal careers. During our time here at Albany Law, I had the pleasure of serving with her as co-chair of the Women's Law Caucus. So we were both very excited to hear the news, and we're gonna find you later. She has not only inspired many, but she has made the world a better place. Judge Michael always volunteered her time to students and maintains an open door policy in chambers where she mentors students from the community. She was a founding chair of Ivy Hill Preparatory Charter School, an independent K through 5th grade public elementary school, as she knows firsthand how access to a quality education can change lives. A judge should strive to improve the quality of justice, always demonstrate sound judgment, and strive to have a judicial temperament that includes fairness, open-mindedness, patience, courtesy, understanding, compassion, and humility. Judge Michael has been such a judge and has opened doors for other women to follow in her footsteps. For these reasons and so many others, it is my honor and pleasure to present the Honorable Marsha Michael with the 2022 Kate Stoneman Award. Please help me in welcoming the Honorable Marsha Michael. Judge Marsha Michael, it is my honor on behalf of Albany Law School to bestow you the Kate Stoneman Award.
Thank you. You forgot your mask. Good evening, everyone. Amy, thank you so much for that introduction. You made me sound wonderful. I should bring you with me everywhere. I can't believe that it's been over 20 years since we met in this very lecture hall, believing we were early only to find out we were super late and had to be in the overflow section. Amy, your friendship and your support over the years epitomizes the meaning of the Kate Stoneman Honor. You truly do seek to expand opportunities for women, and I thank you for that. I also thank Albany Law School, Kate Stoneman Honorary Committee, Albany Law School Alumni Association, Dean Ouellette, Professor Mary Lynch, Jeffrey Sieber for your emails, Marna Redding for taking me around, and everyone who made this evening possible. I also want to thank many of the law students who I had an opportunity to meet with today and to speak with. Your questions epitomizes the type of education that you are getting here. Your questions were thoughtful. Your questions really gave us a sense that you're thinking about the next step, and you really are just dedicated. You are truly the next Kate Stomans. I also want to thank my fellow Albany alum who are watching via video. Justice Lynette Rosado, Judge Tanika Frost, who I had the opportunity to share many classes with, sitting all the way at the top of the lecture hall where we could sneak in and chat with each other, but also talk about what we were learning. So thank you guys for being here. Also thank my friend LaToya Joyner for being here. It is an honor to receive this award amongst the rest of the honorees. Congratulations to you on this honor. And I'm truly humbled to be in the same class and category with you. This is a surprising honor. Kate Stoneman Day was always an event at the law school that I made sure I was at. I was at the event because there were so many inspiring women who would come in and you would get an opportunity to see what your career could look like outside of law school. But also the reception was the best. You know how it is when you're in law school, you're always in seek of that good reception. And the Kate Stoneman reception was hands down always the best. But even though I went to those, all of the Kate Stoneman receptions while I was here, it was never a thought as I was sitting there that I would be an honoree. The honorees that I saw here, they were different. I came here from the Bronx, a single parent household. The story was just different. And so I never thought that this would be me. So I am truly, truly humbled. However, what I do know about my time here as a student is that the beauty of Albany Law School is the quality of the education, the quality of the professional preparation that you get here. It is unique. It is the type of preparation that as a woman entering the legal field, it emboldens you to use the power of your voice because you feel prepared to go out into the world. The tools that I received here planted the seeds for me to be successful in this profession. To the women who are here, know that what you're doing now is an investment in your ability to chart your own career path. Know that the preparation you receive here will allow you to be ready for every next step in your career. Know that the challenges that will come before you, you're prepared to meet those challenges because of the foundation that you have here, you've been receiving here at Albany Law School. So I thank you for this honor, and I hope to keep advancing all that it means to be a Kate Stoneman honoree. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Gary. I'm the presiding justice of the Appellate Division, 3rd Department, and I am a proud 1990 graduate of Albany Law School. And it's such a joy to be here to participate in this event this evening. I am so glad to be here, and particularly in person, to honor the people who are carrying on Kate Stoneman's legacy, and, you know, just to be here with you all. What a joy, what a joy. Thank you to the Kate Stoneman Committee for bringing us all together. It is a singular privilege and a tremendous honor to introduce our next awardee, the Honorable Shirley Troutman. One of my memorable first meetings with Judge Troutman, not I think the very first time that we met, but it's memorable. And I want to mention this to the students here. It was at a alumni event held in New York City during Bar Week. And I mention that because these events are worth attending. You never know who you're going to get to meet and chat with and have some fun with. My meeting that evening with Judge Troutman was memorable for several reasons. One, she was very clearly very impressive, okay, very impressive. Two, she was refreshingly candid in sharing her thoughts with me. And three, not the least, she was an awful lot of fun to spend the evening with. So, and not everybody can say that. I hope I can still say that about a Court of Appeals judge, but it was true. It was true. So I'm very happy that we're here tonight presenting her with this very well-deserved award. Before earning her JD here at Albany Law School, Judge Troutman studied at the State University of New York at Buffalo. As a lawyer, she served as an assistant district attorney, an assistant attorney general, and an assistant United States attorney for the Western District of New York, working in a broad array of both civil and criminal cases in those prestigious roles. She first took the bench in 1994 in Buffalo City Court. She then went on to serve both as a county judge in Erie County, and then as a justice of the Supreme Court in the 8th Judicial District, before being nominated to serve upon the Appellate Division 4th Department in 2016. Late last year, she underwent what can only be described as a grueling application and review process, and Governor Hochul nominated her thereafter, as you know, to sit on our state Court of Appeals. Her nomination received tremendous and broad-based support, bipartisan support. She was unanimously advanced by the Judiciary Committee, and on the Senate floor, in addition to the Majority Leader and the Judiciary Chair, and the chair of the Codes Committee, and several others who spoke in her support, the Senate Minority Leader also stood to support her nomination. She was confirmed in January, and as you know, here again, here we are with our newest Court of Appeals judge. Judge Troutman's extraordinary professional achievements alone and her exceptional reputation as a brilliant legal thinker, these merit our recognition. But in addition to all that, throughout her entire career, Judge Troutman has also devoted a tremendous amount of time and energy to improving the law and advancing the status of women and people of color. I can't, standing here this evening, you'd have to listen to me speak an awful long time for me to begin to do justice to the number of ways in which Judge Troutman has done that. But I'm going to mention two very briefly, a couple of highlights. She is currently serving as the president of the New York chapter of the National Association of Women Judges. She was also serving, until very recently, as a co-chair of the Franklin H. Williams Commission, which works to promote racial and ethnic fairness within the courts. As co-chair of the Williams Commission, as in all of her endeavors, she has earned a reputation as a thoughtful jurist, a leader, a champion for diversity, and a dedicated public servant. Finally, before I turn the podium over, it does bear noting that a key supporter of Judge Troutman's nomination for this award, in addition to me, and of course, the presiding justice of the Fourth Department, the Honorable Gerald Whalen, was Judge Richard Rivera, who sang her praises as a devoted mentor, a determined leader, and a zealous advocate for a more equitable and inclusive court system. Judge Rivera is here with us tonight, and it was recently announced that he will be carrying forward the work that Judge Troutman has been so committed to as the new chair of the Williams Commission. I got to hear given him a few tips on that earlier. So throughout Judge Troutman's very impressive career, she's been a steadfast supporter of Albany Law School and a proud alumna, and we are all so proud of her. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Shirley Troutman. Judge Shirley Troutman, it is my honor, on behalf of Albany Law School, to bestow upon you the Kate Stoneman Award. Thank
you. Good evening. It is indeed a pleasure to be here with you today as the Kate Stoneman Award recipient. It has been many years since I walked the halls of Albany Law School. However, I have fond memories of that time in my life. During my career, I have received many honors. However, to be a recipient of an award bestowed by this institution will henceforth be one of my most prized honors, due to the fact that it comes from my alma mater. In addition to thanking the committee as a whole, I wish to thank Presiding Justice of the Appellate Division, 3rd Department, Elizabeth Gary, and Family Court Judge Richard Rivera for each graciously submitting nominations on my behalf. My judicial colleagues are two of the most humble and thoughtful people that I know. Yet they are each also rock stars of the judiciary in their own right. Justice Gary, in her role as presiding judge of her court, is required to serve in the dual roles of an administrator and as a judge. However, she always finds time to contribute to efforts that will help make our state's legal system more inclusive and responsive to the needs of all New Yorkers. Judge Rivera is a well-respected jurist and one of our state's most overwhelmed courts. Nevertheless, the pressures of his court doesn't lessen his compassion for those who appear before him or his commitment to dispense justice expeditiously and fairly. I would like to take this opportunity to publicly congratulate him on his appointment as my successor as co-chair of the Franklin H. Williams Judicial Commission. I know he is prepared to continue the important work of the commission to obtain true racial and ethnic fairness in our courts. As I was considering what I should share with you this evening, it occurred to me that I was receiving an award named after a woman whom W.E.B. Du Bois could have been speaking of when he wrote, "There is no force equal to a woman determined to rise." I find those words to be ironic because when I was a student here, that description certainly didn't apply to me. Yet, as I stand before you today, I realize that by using the knowledge I gained within these very walls, I indeed have become that woman. However, my journey to becoming who I am now is in no small part due to men and women in my life who saw a spark in me that they believed had the potential to ignite countless possibilities. And they refused to let me extinguish it out of fear. I realize now that if there had been countless women and people of color serving as judges and litigators at all levels of the legal profession, it would have been much easier for me to see those goals as achievable. As a result, I am grateful for women like Kate Stoneman, who refused to allow her gender to become an obstacle that prevented her from pursuing her dreams to become an attorney in the state of New York. In my view, she is an excellent example of the fact that it is not enough to be the first who breaks down a barrier. It is equally important not to be the last. I know today that I stand on the shoulders of Kate Stoneman as the 10th woman and the second woman of color to serve on the Court of Appeals. And as a result, I know that I must do that which is necessary not to be the last. Thank you.
Good evening. As we can all see, Kate Stoneman's reputation precedes her. But like many women in pursuit of their legal career, the path to Esquire was not without obstacles along the way. It is safe to say she paved the way for women like our professors, my colleagues, myself, to have the opportunity to be here today and follow our dreams of practicing law. I am honored to highlight and introduce you to one of those trailblazing women today, our Kate Stoneman keynote speaker and recipient of the prestigious 2022 Miriam M. 72 Stoneman Award, Berta E. Hernández-Truyol, an internationally renowned human rights scholar and Albany Law alumna. Bertha's accomplishments within the law as a woman of color and from humble beginnings are too extensive to describe in depth. But her efforts to further human rights by analyzing existing protections within the law while actively seeking change are inspiring to say the least. With her legal background as a law professor and in her many published books, articles, and speeches, she has brought to light issues of women's equality, race, including Latinx and Indigenous peoples issues, constitutional rights, and has provided frameworks to current international and cultural crises, among many other important topics, all while not being fearful of standing up for what she believes in. As I wrote this, I realized that being a woman of color and from humble beginnings myself, sometimes we can't help but seek change because of our roots. A little over 20 years ago, Berta gave an introduction at the Western New England College School of Law's first annual Northeastern Pupil of Color Scholarship Conference, where she stated the following: my ethnicity, my race, my gender, my sexuality, my class, my ability, and my education are all a part of me. I cannot atomize my whole into little pieces and come up with me. Our multiple component identities are indivisible parts of each and every one of us. We have to accept each other as the whole we are. We are who we are and we are what we are all the time, wherever we go and with whomever we interact. Berta's work as a whole speaks to the plight of the woman she is by using her diversity as an effective tool rather than as a hindrance. She is who she is all the time by actively inspiring and working towards change for humans, but specifically for women. This is what Kate Stoneman did. I hope that one day I'm able to use all the parts that make up my identity into my journey of becoming a lawyer, and I am grateful for amazing honorees like Berta who have sparked that desire. There is no doubt that she emanates a modern day Kate Stoneman of 2022. Please help me in welcoming Berta Hernandez-Truyol. Berta, it is my honor and on behalf of Albany Law School to bestow to you a Kate Stoneman Award.
I come after 3 very hard acts to follow. This is more intimidating than I needed to be. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Es un gran placer y un gran honor. It is a great pleasure and a deep honor to be here to celebrate Kate Stoneman. I am humbled by having been chosen to deliver the keynote address on such a significant occasion and celebrate my co-recipients who have achieved so much. As all Stoneman Award recipients, I am grateful to Kate Stoneman for paving the way. The title of my comments are Kate Stoneman, an Awakened Woman. I'll explain that in a bit. First, however, I want to thank the selection committee and the planners for the amazing job they have done getting this gathering organized, with a special shout out to Dean Willett, Mary Lynch, Jeff Sieber, and David, who took me around this beautifully reconstructed place. I would have been lost. A special hello to Anthony Farley, where are you? Who I've known for many, many years. And I would also be remiss if I don't note that Professor Michael Hutter is the only professor with whom I studied who still is here. When I was in law school, beyond required courses, rather than take courses based on subject matter, I took teachers who were challenging and interesting. Professor Hutter was one I followed. I took every course he taught. Thank you for being an inspiration. And thank you to my family, Vivian, Nikolai, Nadal, and Natalia for being here, and to my dear friend, Eva Eggensteiner, for being here to share this time. Last September, I received a letter from Dean Willett and Professor Lynch inviting me to deliver the keynote at the yearly Kate Stoneman Day celebration designed to, and I quote, honor powerful women who have demonstrated a commitment to seeking change and expanding opportunities for women in law. The letter then proceeded to list various trailblazers who had received the award. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, Judge Constance Baker Motley, Chief Judge Judith Kaye. Being in the company of these heroes is an honor, but I was hugely daunted. So when I'm daunted, I need to go center, and this time I went to Tara Brach, who is a psychologist and Buddhist teacher and scholar who blends Eastern and Western philosophies. She has reflected as follows, and I quote, as long as we are alive, we feel fear. It is an intrinsic part of our makeup, as natural as a bitter cold winter day or the winds that rip branches off trees. If we resist it or push it aside, we miss a powerful opportunity for awakening. I told myself, you know how to do this. Heeding Tara's counsel and taking this opportunity for awakening, I decided to share some significant life experiences, some of which took place within these very walls, and blend them with some academic ideas. I first remembered my Albany Law School graduation when Dean Welsh, and I hope you're watching, announced that I was graduating with honors. And then the faculty member handing out the diplomas not only dropped his jaw, but he dropped my diploma. Why, I will never really know, but I suspect that it was my first semester recitation in crim law. You see, the men were Mr. So-and-so, and the women were so-and-so. We had to stand up to recite cases and respond to questions. Well, let's just say I did not do it the traditional way. Non-traditional it may have been, but it worked. I never got called on again. Other comparable incidents that came to mind: in high school, when I applied for early admissions to Cornell at the insistence of my headmaster in Puerto Rico, only to receive a nicely written letter informing me that early admissions was only for boys. At Cornell, going to a career counselor to receive guidance on applying to law school, only to be told that I really didn't want to go to law school, that I should go into teaching and return home to, quote, help my people, end quote. Ironically, the counselor was right. I am a teacher, although somehow I can't imagine that my being a law professor is what he had in mind. But being oblivious sometimes is really helpful. Because having gotten nowhere with the counselor, I just marched over to the law school admissions office to see if I could get the information I sought. But surprises kept coming. The dean of admissions saw me, brought me into his office, and then simply lamented, "Why didn't you come earlier? I just accepted a Black girl from Duke." I was clueless then. Kate Stoneman would have gotten it. And there was a time I was being recruited by a firm in DC. It was my last interview with a big honcho partner in the hiring group who turns to me and says, yeah, this was many years ago, but you don't forget these things. "Little girl, do you think you would be comfortable in a room full of foul-mouthed, cigar-smoking labor organizers?" By now, not so clueless, I knew there was no way I was going to be working there. So I said to him, well, my grandfather was a non-foul-mouthed labor organizer in Cuba, and I got along with him just fine. I got out of there quickly and immediately called my parents. In the pre-cell phone era, Mommy and Papi would get on extension so that we could all have a conversation. Mommy was a lawyer in Cuba and could not fathom this reaction. My dad, on the other hand, got it and said, "Why didn't you just tell him that you're not a girl, you're a lawyer?" But these are not upsetting memories, as when they happened, they were simply statements about the status quo. I was asleep. Awakenings allow us to realize that the status quo is not a neutral position. The status quo internalizes in each of us and renders normative in the structures of the legal systems and the law itself the way things are. It blinds us from taking how things should be. It normalizes subordination, vulnerability, marginalization, exclusion, and injustice. Looking back, these experiences are moments that provided nudges for my awakenings. They made me the person I am today, always thinking of and searching for how things should be. Así soy yo. It's me. Just like Kate Stoneman was herself, teacher, lawyer, suffragette, what today we would call or designate a social justice warrior. But let me share a few more soy yo moments. I was born in Cuba. My mom went to Havana to study because that was the only university in Cuba at that time. There at 17, she met my dad, a poor but brilliant kid from the inner city, an unlikely pair whose love lasted on this earthly plane for 73 years until my dad passed at 95 years ago. Castro's arrival, however, led to my family leaving the island, which was the first major transition in my life. I learned English in Miami. We moved to Puerto Rico, where I lived through high school. I went off to college at the same time my folks moved to Europe. This time is probably proper to tell you that when I went to college, I had not a clue that I was different because I am Latina. I was born in Cuba. I grew up in Puerto Rico. We were all Latinas. But later on, I had no doubt I was different when I realized I like girls. Soy yo. I came to law school. I was one of 32 women and one of 8 students of color out of 280 students in my class. I was the only Latina in the antitrust division when I practiced there. When I started teaching law in 1982, I was one of 24 Latinas in tenure track positions in the US, one of 2 Latinas. Today, I'm still the only Latina. There's 1 Latino on the tenure track at the law school. Yes, in Florida. Little by little, I found who I am. The self-discovery and the discovery of American culture, my soy yo process, fueled my flames of justice seeking. We are all complex, what I call multidimensional beings. We all, as you just said, have a culture, a sex, a gender, a language, an ethnicity, a sexuality, a gender identity, a level of education, a fluid socioeconomic status. It's just that some of us don't have to think about the status quo because it is who we are. If we are the status quo, we don't have to think about outside the box. But all these markers are what we are. Those markers frame the discovery of who we are. ¿Quién soy yo? Which takes me to more recent times in my life, which remains and always will be a work in progress. Before marriage equality, I lost my partner of over 20 years to a short but incredibly cruel battle with cancer. The funeral home was not going to let me make arrangements because in their eyes, we were strangers. So I used my tools that I started developing here. I had a power of attorney. Of course, the power of attorney died when my partner died, but the funeral home didn't know that. I showed them the power of attorney. I made the arrangements. An unconventional challenge to the status quo as my non-traditional recitation in crim law. In both cases, justice prevailed. I thought there would be no more chapters in my book of life, but I was wrong. I met my now wife, Vivian, someone with a similar experience, and we became quick friends. And now with marriage equality, we're happily married with 3 great kids, all here. Thank you. I just got the evil eye from someone, I'm not gonna say who. Gracias por estar aquí. Thank you for being here. My soy yo moments have been awakenings. An idea that I have been mentioning, and let me explain the concept because I started developing this during my sabbatical. And I share this with you and I decided to talk about it because to me, Kate Stoneman is personification of awakeness. The general concept of awakening is the idea of attaining a critical consciousness. The concept is widely embraced and has been developed in the context of theology, psychology, education, sociology, but is completely lacking in law. Across disciplines, the awakening formula have some commonalities, and the basic foundation is the questioning of the status quo. And in questioning the status quo, awakening explores locations and hierarchies of power to ascertain whose narrative the status quo confirms and whose narrative it omits or erases. Awakening interrogates whether the powerful exclude the marginable. A legal awakening, then, would seek justice. It would analyze questions and reject inequities and take action to eradicate them. What awakening does is it recognizes that each one of us is guided by what I have labeled our perceptual playbooks, a collection of systems of beliefs, cognitive scripts created and passed down by families, religious traditions, cultures, and societies in which we live, as well as by the law and legal systems. Each of our perceptual playbooks is imbued with ideas and tropes that define us and our viewpoints. Awakening entails the realization that because we operate based on our playbooks, we must engage in a critically conscious analysis that exposes the series of assumptions and patterns of behavior embedded in those perceptual playbooks. Only once we unearth the foundations of our scripted beliefs can we arrive at raw truth. A truth that eschews learned dualities of good and bad, right and wrong, worthy and unworthy. For example, let me share a piece of my awakening process, which is a difficult one. Awakening unveiled the disturbing reality that my culture, la cultura latina, does not embody or define the truth. I realized that machismo and its lesser known flip side Marianismo are not the correct and only way to be, that binaries are constructed to control, that many sexuality and other tropes that set up hierarchies are simply heteropatriarchy asserting its power. Internalizing the status quo translates to internalized oppression. Kate Stoneman would have none of that. To awaken is to resist filling in knowledge gaps with the fabricated information of our perceptual playbooks that allow us to navigate uncharted waters without deep analysis. Take, for example, stereotypes. Our perceptual playbooks use stereotypes, racialized, ethnicized, class, gendered, sexualized, to create a persona of someone we do not know. For example, that stranger walking down the street, or sidling too closely to us on a park bench, or movie theater, or crowded subway. That stereotype fills knowledge gaps and interferes with knowing. Psychological studies have shown that these gap fillers activate our brains even if we disavow the normative content. These consequences follow with implicit and structural biases. Awakening allows us to pierce the veil of our life's narrative as imprinted in our perceptual playbooks and opens the road to liberation. In awakening, we expose a false self based on the inherited tropes and give birth to an authentic self that becomes aware of existing patterns, interrogates the patterns and the sources, systematically challenges and dismantles belief systems, and creates new narratives based on justice. To be sure, awakening is a lifelong process of critical deconstruction of thoughts grounded upon perceptual playbooks. The cycles are patent in the non-complete journey toward racial, sex, sexuality, economic ability, justice, to name a few. History shows the ebb and flow of progress backlash. We can call them cycles of awakening. In the context of race, the mere existence of slavery is evidence of a non-awakened law. The 3/5 clause was intentional but evil. The freeing of enslaved persons resulted in fear based on perceptual playbooks, which led to the creation of the KKK. The Reconstruction Era that opened office to Black persons and saw an increase in business ownership resulted in events like the Tulsa Massacre, with legal response being passage of Jim Crow laws. The civil rights movement saw increased violence against Black persons, and the killing of Floyd and Aubrey and Breonna resulted in individual and collective awakenings that we still must see if of a lasting kind. The progress backlash model is not limited to race. Women's attained right to control their bodies led to activism that we might soon see succeed against women's autonomy. The ruling of Smith led to RFRA. The Obergefell ruling led to a proliferation of state RFRAs. Just last year in Bostock led to an explosion of anti-trans bills across the country. In Florida, we're about to pass a Don't Say Gay bill. The election of a Black president and more recently, Black and Jewish senators in Georgia have opened the floodgates for voting restrictions across the states. These realities underscore that awakening is not the same as intentionality. Consciousness is not the same as knowledge. All these moves are as intentional as they are unconscious. This is the work for you. Laws that you can awaken, work that Kate Stoneman would undertake. Throughout history, there have been nudges towards awakening. Movements include the civil rights, feminist, suffragist, queer, social and criminal justice movements. To be sure, each of these has seen backlashes. And parallel to social movements, there have been legal, theoretical movements. Legal realism posited that law derives not from abstract rules, but from social interest and policy. Critical legal theory provided an awakening to the reality that not only is law meshed with social issues, but it is imbued with social biases. Feminist theory took the critics to task for ignoring the role of gender. And CRT, much in the news these days, examines the role of race in law, again showing how perceptual playbooks perpetuate the racial subordination that started with slavery and was incorporated into the national story by way of belief systems of those who write, enforce, and interpret the law. Queer crits do a similar unveiling of the sexualized hierarchy favoring heteropatriarchy. Discrits unmask the scripts that presume and normalize a particular conceptualization of ability. Class crits reveal how legal scripts embed economic hierarchies. Lat crit unveils bias from a multidimensional perspective. But the law remains asleep. What does an awakened law look like? Kate Stoneman knew. She knew it then and she would know it now. First, it would be justice-centered. Second, human dignity would be at its core. And it would consider the multidimensionality of the beings it governs. It would have an anti-subordination approach, and it would have an anti-marginability concept, exposing vulnerabilities hidden by the status quo. So Kate Stoneman was an awakened woman. She saw injustice and she remedied it. Kate Stoneman was intentionally conscious. Prior keynoters have called her intersectional. I called her awakened multidimensional. She did not opt to fight for only women joining the bar and ignore the fact that Black persons were also excluded. She eradicated the sex and race bar to practice. Had she fought only for women, it would have been only white women, because the race exclusion, and this invokes in me images of Sojourner Truth saying, "Ain't I a woman?" Kate Stoneman did not accept the status quo as a neutral position. She saw it for what it was, unjust, unconscious, even if intentional. We have a world that needs much love these days. There are global migration crises caused by desperate conditions of privation. There are kids in cages, sometimes literal and sometimes socially fabricated. There are melting ice caps. There are disappearing species. There is ethnic, racial, and gender injustice. There are pandemics. There are hungry and poor people. There are the marginable. Today, we are seeing a frightening war illegally targeting civilians. And in our own backyard, a dog whistle attack on a sitting circuit court judge, Ketanji Brown Jackson, a Harvard-educated trailblazer, if there was one, who stands to be the first Black woman on the Supreme Court of the United States. These and more challenges are yours. I hand them to you gladly. I urge that each of us ask ourselves this question every day, maybe sometimes a few times a day. Am I going to take the easy road and affirm the status quo? Or am I going to take a Kate Stoneman bold leap, say soy yo, and fight injustice wherever we see it? What are you going to answer when you ask yourself, ¿Quién soy yo? Who am I? Are you going to support the status quo? Or are you going to take up the Kate Stoneman banner and challenge it? Really, I ask you, is there a choice? Thanks to Kate Stoneman for inspiration. Thank you.
Wow. That was pretty incredible. So I need a second. Before we go to that fabulous reception that Judge Michael referred to, and believe me, we have even more fabulous food this year because we haven't had a lot of events with food, and so we had a better budget. There are a few final things that I need to do. And one is I want to update everyone on, I got so caught up in that last, the keynote that I didn't look at my next job. So I want to update everyone on a more recent Stoneman tradition, which is a student competition that we run named after Catherine Katz. And we need to thank those who contribute to it, Amy Kellogg, Betsy Katz, and Lori Shanks. There's a cash award that goes with it, and students submit what they think Kate Stoneman would do were she to live today. And we have had dresses constructed from RBG Opinions. We've had Twitter sites that Kate Stoneman might send out in the past. The competition is ongoing right now. The due date is April 4th, I believe. Everything's on the website, and you will all be alerted to a celebration honoring the award winners in April at some point. The other thing I want to alert you to is, here we go, found my place. As you go downstairs to the reception, there's a wonderful updated plaque to Kate Stoneman and an archive of the other honorees. So do stop by and take a look at that. And so thank you so much. This is the end of our ceremony celebration, but let's continue to honor the honorees and to party downstairs. Thank you.